Dominik Szoboszlai, or Dominik Szoboszlai as I've been calling him on Football Manager for the last 2 years. Oops. He's the man with the Midas touch, the man that Jurgen Klopp loves so much that he spent £60 million to bring him to Anfield. And this might be one of the most interesting transfers these fair eyes have seen in a while, because if you look at the basic information, the real surface level numbers, it's actually hard to see why they've spent that much money, what he's going to bring to the team that they don't already do. But when you go deeper, then, oh wow. Oh wow. Alright, so there's a couple of factors here that make this such an exciting transfer. The first, obviously, is who is Dominik Szoboszlai? What does he bring to teams? What is he good at? What does he do on a football pitch? But the other is the season that Liverpool have just had. What went so badly wrong for them? Why did they drop out of the Champions League places? And then, when you understand these two things, and you marry them together, mwah. And this is why I said at the start, by the way, that when you look at the very basic details for Szoboszlai, it starts to look like a bit of a weird transfer for Liverpool. He played the vast majority of his minutes for Leipzig on the right-hand side of the attack last season, and it's always good to have squad depth, and Mo Salah's certainly not getting any younger, but he didn't exactly have a bad season, and he doesn't look like he's slowing down, and that's a lot of money for someone to come in and play second fiddle. Likewise, he's renowned for his dead ball delivery, and Leipzig get all of these goals from the great crosses he puts in and the great free kicks he takes, but Liverpool, believe it or not, actually led the Premier League last season for goals from set pieces. They got 17, which was more than any other team in the league, so again, good to have another option in that department, but there's clearly nothing wrong with the deliveries that Alexander-Arnold or Robertson are putting into the box, so he's also really good at putting pressure on high up the pitch and winning the ball back in the final third, but we all know that Liverpool are really good at doing that. They're one of the most aggressive teams in that area of the pitch as it is. In fact, they came second in the Premier League last season for the total number of high turnovers. So again, he's not bringing anything they don't already have there. And don't get me wrong, if that's as far as the observations went, then clearly he'd be an excellent fit for this team. He already does all the things they like to do, so it's probably a very smart bit of business in that regard, but 60 odd million for what effectively becomes depth is a bit odd, especially for Liverpool, because they wouldn't spend that much money unless someone was going to come in and really make a massive contribution to the first 11. And if we look at Liverpool last season and we start to actually look at the context behind some of those numbers, you start to see why they've specifically identified him as a man who can come in and do exactly that. So first off, this is the Premier League table as we went into the World Cup break. Liverpool were having an absolute shocker. They were closer to Wolves at the bottom of the league than they were to Manchester City at the top. Their chances of getting back into the Champions League looked pretty bad. And the reason for that, largely, was because this was a transitional season for Liverpool. Jurgen Klopp looked at the way they'd been playing, looked at how teams were starting to, if not figure it out, then become better at playing against it. They had loads of contracts that were expiring at the end of the season. It was a really good time to try and do something new. And this is what he tried to do. He moved away from the 4-3-3 that had brought them so much success and decided that he wanted a little bit more control in games. He didn't want to be as reliant on the high counter press because it's ultimately quite a chaotic way to play. It's very difficult to exert control over games unless you're literally throttling the life out of your opponent. He wanted the ability to camp in the opposition's half even when they couldn't get the ball back off them and just make things happen. And thus that's how they spent. They already had Thiago. He's a brilliant deep-lying playmaker who doesn't really fit in the 4-3-3 but is brilliant in sort of a deeper creative role. They got Darwin Núñez, who yes can play across the front line but is far closer to a more traditional through-the-middle striker than they'd had in a very long time, certainly more than Firmino is. And with Sadio Mane leaving, they brought in Fabio Carvalho, who can play in the same sort of position but is a completely different player. He's not going to fly past you, he's not going to run at you, he's going to create things from out wide. So the idea was they could still press high, they could still be that Liverpool of old, but if the game demanded a different approach, they could camp themselves in the opposition's half, play the ball around, and be more patient in waiting for these opportunities to open. And how did all that go? Well, if we'd look again at the league table, while they did clearly have some successes with it early on, they clearly were not as dangerous, not as threatening, not as good a team as they had been under the old system. So they came back after the World Cup, and Jurgen Klopp had enough. And in fairly short order, they dropped the 4-2-3-1, went back to the 4-3-3, moved Darwin Núñez out to the left-hand side, and spent a load of money on Cody Gakpo, who, while still being effective through the middle as a traditional centre-forward, is far more in that Firmino mould of, we'll drop into the space, we'll create room for the other attackers, and they pretty much went back to this high velocity, high turnover game. And if you recall me mentioning before that Liverpool actually finished second last season for high turnovers, that was by the end of the season. At the World Cup break, they were smack bang in the middle of that table, which means they did so much high turnover-ing in the second half of the season, they jumped from right in the middle to nearly top. If you extrapolate that out across the entire year, if they'd just done that the whole time, they would have led that league by miles. And what happened was, it very nearly worked for them. They got within a whisker of getting back into the Champions League places. They beat Man United 7-0, which is not bad. They were far more effective doing this than they were in the first half of the season. And if you look at their transfer business in the summer, that seems to have flicked a bit of a switch in Jurgen Klopp's mind. What should immediately jump out at you about the transfers of Szoboszlai and Alexis McAllister is they are players who are very much in the mould of this 4-3-3 system, but crucially, more versatile and arguably more intelligent than the players who used to play it. McAllister is going to be fantastic in one of these 8 roles, but he can also sit deep in front of the back 4, and he can also push up and play as a 10. And Szoboszlai is amazing on the right wing, but he can also play on the left and through the middle and as a centre forward and as a central midfielder. So it's clear what Jurgen Klopp wants to do now is not completely change the system, so now we're a team that controls games, but to evolve the system so that now we are a team who still plays like this but can better control games. So how will Szoboszlai help them do that? Well, first off, yes, he primarily does most of his work on the right-hand side, but that's kind of a misnomer because Leipzig play a 4-box-2 thing, so he's never quite out far on the right-hand side, but then neither is Mo Salah. You want him in that channel. Szoboszlai is great in that position. But that was last season. The season before, he played predominantly on the left-hand side of the attack because he can go and do things like this, and like this, and like this. Liverpool are top of the league for the goals scored from set pieces, yes, but they rank pretty lowly for just bangers from outside the box. That's a pretty tidy little option to have. Likewise, while we said before, Liverpool were still really high at the top of the league for the number of turnovers they were doing. They actually ranked really low for the number of those turnovers that either led to a shot or directly led to a goal. So they were doing it, and they were doing it often, but they weren't necessarily doing it well. What Szoboszlai brings is not just the ability to get involved in those high turnovers, but he was excellent in the Bundesliga last year for turning those into chances. He was 3rd in the entire league for a high turnover that led to a shot. And what's really fun is if we overlay all of those high turnovers on this pitch here, you will notice they are not particularly concentrated in one area of the pitch. The guy played 77% of his minutes on the right-hand side, but his turnovers are absolutely everywhere. Again, just to hammer this point home, he will play the Mo Salah role in this system really effectively, but unlike Mo Salah, he will play several other roles very effectively. And just as a final point on this, and something I think Klopp deserves incredible credit for correctly addressing, is that we've already talked about how they get so many goals and so many chances from set pieces. They get great delivery from both Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, so why spend all that money on a player who's primarily known for his set piece delivery? Well, it is also something that other teams exploit. There's been loads of talk this season, some of it from me, about how teams have correctly identified the area behind Alexander-Arnold or something behind Robertson as a way to get in against Liverpool. And while a lot of that does come from open play, if they are also your primary set piece takers, it means every time you get a dangerous attacking thing around the box, you are automatically putting one of your defenders in the final third, whether you particularly want to or not. And you tend to always see whenever teams are looking to spring a counter-attack against Liverpool from a set piece, they'll just position a player in the area immediately behind whoever is taking it. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should take them off set pieces and put Szoboszlai on them exclusively, but it gives you not just another option, but a really important option. Now you've got one of your attacking 3 able to take those set pieces. You haven't got to overcommit defenders if you don't necessarily want to. And you combine that with the fact that it looks like Liverpool will experiment a bit more next year with moving Trent Alexander-Arnold into the middle, either during their build-up play or just starting him there as he has done for England, and that's just something else you don't have to worry about. And on top of that, he's just a fantastic footballer. Like, you can see any highlight reel package of him playing last season or the season before, and what he can do on his strong foot, on his weak foot, from outside the box, from inside the box. He's just... And I'm saying this, right, as a Newcastle United fan who was really hoping that we were going to buy him. Obviously, there's no guarantees with any player. Maybe he doesn't settle, maybe he gets a bad injury, maybe he just doesn't like most of his teammates. There's never any guarantees, but for what he could potentially do for Liverpool, what he could potentially do for himself and take them with him along the way, it's It's a potentially season-transforming signing, in my opinion. I think with this one buy alone, Liverpool have gone from, ooh, they need to do a lot of work this summer to, ho-ho, they've done a lot of work this summer. So, Liverpool fans, are you giddy at the prospect of Dominik Szoboszlai? Am I still somehow saying it wrong despite watching 3 translation videos and the thing you put on your own club Instagram this afternoon? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, more importantly than that, this is FourFourTwo. It's the world's greatest YouTube channel. If you're not already subscribed, please do hit the button below. We'll be doing this kind of thing all summer for all the clubs, with all the transfers, all the really interesting talking points. I will be talking about them. In the meantime, though, of course, thank you so much for watching. I've been Adam Cleary. I forgot to say that at the start. Get me on Twitter at Adam Cleary, C-L-E-R-Y, and I will see you soon. Bye!